Books, books. I like books. I'm gonna read them all.
Hi readers, Chris here. Welcome to my channel where I review fantasy, Stephen King, all sorts of books, and today I'm going to be doing my June wrap-up and my July TBR. It is hot as heck here in New York, very, very humid, so I'm going to try to get through this video without sweating. I can't have any fans on because they're super noisy, so let me jump right in. So yeah, if you follow me over on Bookstagram, you will know June was a very busy month. Not just in my work life, but in my personal life. Mostly in my work life, but I also took a trip in June, so I was gone for a while. So I did not finish all of the books that were on my TBR for June. I got 5 out of 6, which I think is pretty good. There's only one that I didn't finish, and you know what? That's okay. Sometimes things happen. Of those 5 books, I pretty much enjoyed most of them. There is a very clear, favorite book of the month, and there's a very clear, least favorite. Again, not that I didn't like it, just least favorite. And then there's 3 in the middle that I kept going back and forth on. But I'm going to jump in with my least favorite book of June, The Colorado Kid by Stephen King. Now, I was really excited to read this one because previous to this, I had read The Dark Tower, which is like a huge 1,000-page chunker. So I was really excited to read this one. And it's basically about an unsolved crime, an unsolved murder mystery. So there's this young girl, this young, investigative journalist, and she's working with these 2 older men, and they tell her this story of the Colorado Kid, this guy that was found dead on a beach. And basically the moral of the story is some things just remain unresolved, unsolved. That's the whole premise of the book. Now, King says in the beginning of the book that people either love this one or hate it. I didn't love it, but I also didn't hate it either. I see what he was trying to do. It's just, I'm not the type of person that likes unresolved mysteries. I don't like unresolved stories. I like my stories tied up in a little bow. So yeah, this one didn't work for me, but that's okay. Okay, so now we're getting into the middle section, and I liked all of these books, but I had to put one at number 4, and that's going to be The Dream Hunter by Sherrilyn Kenyon. The only reason that this is lower than the other 2 is because I've been reading this series for a while, so even though I really, really enjoyed this one, there's nothing new per se. So if you're not familiar with Sherrilyn Kenyon's Dark Hunter series, it is a series of supernatural romance stories, and they're very, very hot. They're very, very steamy. They're usually pretty light on plot, heavy on the steam, and whenever I take a trip, I like to read one of these books. I took a trip in May, I read one. I took a trip in June, I read one. Sneak peek, I'm taking another trip in July. That's the only time I read these books, is when I go on trips. Now, I do feel like this particular one, The Dream Hunter, and this is book 9 that I've read in this series, I actually feel like I was starting to feel before this one, it was very much starting to become repetitive and the same, but I feel like this book introduces something new to the series. Up until this point, we haven't had these gods that go into people's dreams, so that was a little bit different. It builds on the world building, it builds on characters, it just kind of builds on this world, and I thought that the actual plot was really, really good in this book. There is an actual plot, a really well thought out, deep, complex plot that has been missing from some of the books. It's not just oh, so-and-so is trying to kill me, big dark hunter god, immortal guy is gonna come save me, and we're gonna have lots of sex. I mean, that's kind of what happens here too, but there's a lot more to it, so that makes me like this one better. It's still only number 4, but I really enjoyed it. Number 3 is another book that I really enjoyed, and that is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. This is the second book that I've read by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. It is definitely not going to be the last. I really enjoyed this one. It's not my favorite book of all time, but I really, really liked it. It has a slow start, so this woman gets a letter from her cousin, and her cousin is living at this house in kind of the Mexican countryside, and she thinks that something's wrong. She goes to visit her cousin, and then all these weird things start to happen around the house, and she's trying to figure out what's going on, yada, yada, yada. This book does have a very slow start. It's one of those books that like very slowly builds tension. And I like that because I've read a lot of that with Stephen King books. Like I'm very much used to that. If you're not someone that's used to it, I could see where someone might struggle with that. But for me, I'm totally fine with a book having a slow start, building tension, and as it gets closer and closer to the end, the tension builds and builds and builds, and it gets pretty wild by the end. Like there's some crazy stuff going on in this house with this family, and yeah, I took a trip to Mexico in June. I really enjoyed Mexican Gothic, so that was a winning combination for me. So what could I possibly have liked more than Mexican Gothic? Yeah, this was a really tough choice, but at number 2, I picked The Bone Ships by R.J. Barker. This is a new book to me, a new author to me, and because of that, that's why I put this one a little bit higher. Because of the newness factor, this was another book that was very surprising to me. Another book that starts out very slow. It's very slow. And honestly, when you look at the size of this book, I feel like not a lot actually happens. So the story is basically about this young guy who's kind of like, he wanted to be this like sailor, part of the fleet, someone respected, but he ends up on this ship called the Tide Child, which is like, they call it a death ship. So it's basically like the lowest of the low. It's full of thieves and criminals, yada, yada, yada. He doesn't want to be there. But slowly but surely, as they go on, as the ship takes off and goes on this grand adventure, along the way, you know, the crew starts to come together. They work better together, yada, yada, yada. Now, I say adventure, but there's really only one quest that this ship is on. There's one quest. And honestly, it takes a while to get to that quest. The whole like first half of the book is pretty much like getting the ship, getting the crew, figuring out what they need to do and where they need to be. And again, it was very slow. However, in the second half of the book, I really found myself getting invested. I felt like I had spent so much time already with this main character, spent time with him knowing how he thinks, knowing how he feels, knowing how he feels about his captain and all the various officers on the ship around him. And I just found myself getting really invested in the story. And there is a dragon in this book, which is super, super cool. The dragon is not in the story a lot, but when it shows up, it makes a very big impact, and I really, really like that. So yeah, I found myself really enjoying this one. I definitely want to read more. Again, I am surprised I like this one so much because it was so slow in the beginning, but I can't help how I feel. I ended up enjoying it. And that brings me to my number 1 favorite book of June, another surprise for me, and that is Stalking Jack the Ripper by Kerri Maniscalco. Again, this is the first Kerri Maniscalco book I've ever read. I know she's written some other popular YA series. I've never really I've been mildly interested in them before, but now I am definitely interested because I really liked this book. I really liked this book. So it takes place in Victoria era England when the women of the town were being terrorized by Jack the Ripper. And here we have young Audrey Rose. Her uncle is a scientist. He does autopsies, so he works with corpses, and Audrey is his assistant. So she is not squeamish around bodies and blood and organs or any of that stuff, which I thought made her like a really fun character, because this book is dark. Like, it gets dark. It talks about bodies. It talks about how the victims of Jack the Ripper were killed, how their skin was peeled back, how their organs were removed. Like, This book was way darker than I expected it to be, and I love a dark story. I love a dark story. So it's like this Victoria era dark story. Her family is like the Wadsworth family, you know, there's a Sherlock Holmes element here. So it's really fun. It's a really fun murder mystery that's like, it's still considered YA, but I feel like it really rides that line between YA and adult because it gets really dark at points. So I loved this one. I really, really liked it. I thought it was so much fun. I loved how dark it was, and I am definitely going to be continuing with this series. So the one book that I did not finish, which I kind of knew I wasn't going to finish, is The Whispering Dark by Kelly Andrew. I tried really, really hard to plow through yesterday, but I ran out of time. I had too many things to do during the day. It was Sunday, cooking dinner for the family, all that stuff. So it just didn't happen, but that's okay. I'm going to add this to my July TBR along with some of the other books that I've picked out. Okay, first, let me just say that even though I'm calling this my July TBR, I think it's safe to say that this is going to be my July/August TBR. Because what I've done is I've picked out a bunch of chunky books. I know I'm going on vacation in 3 days now. I'm going to be gone for an entire week. So if I finish even one book this month, it's probably going to be a miracle. So this is my July/August TBR. I'm not doing a reader recommendation this month, again, because I don't have time. I'm going to try to add one when we get to August. So my first pick of the month, other than The Whispering Dark, is going to be my Stephen King book, which is Cell. I don't know anything about Cell. As you can see, I bought this book secondhand, and it's actually a large print book that I got from a library, which at first I thought was kind of funny, right? Because usually, like, older people read large print, but you know what? I'm 40, so I think I'm qualified as an older person now, so I'm actually excited that it's large print. I'm excited. I think that's going to be a fun reading experience. Next up, I have my adult fantasy for the month, and I actually have 2 adult fantasy books picked out. One is going to be my vacation adult fantasy, and the other one is going to be we'll call it regular adult fantasy. So my vacation read is going to be Devil May Cry, the next book in Sherrilyn Kenyon's Dark Hunter series. Now luckily this one is relatively small, so because I am actually taking this one on vacation with me, I should finish it this month. So that leaves the other book that I picked out, which I will definitely not finish this month, and that is Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson. Look at the size of this thing. No, I am going to finish that in July. But I wanted to start it in July to give myself some extra, breathing room so I don't have to try and read it in a whole month. I can take my time throughout July into August, so that is what I plan to do. This is the 3rd book in Sanderson's Stormlight Archive. It's been a while, it's been months since I read the last one, so I really needed to pick this one up. Otherwise, I was going to forget what happened, and I don't have time to go back and read 2 1,000-page books. So it was time for me to get to this one. For my rando pick for the month, I almost didn't pick a rando. I was going to skip it, but at the last minute, literally an hour ago, I decided to pick up a book box book because I'm behind on book box books, so I thought I'd double up this month. And I picked Sisters of the Snake by Sarena and Sasha Nanua. Nanua. So this book is written by 2 sisters. I actually got this book in a Spear Crate book box book. If you've been around for a long time, you may remember Spearcraft used to be a book box service that I subscribed to. This was one of the books I got. I never read it. Again, it is kind of chunky, but this should carry me into August and give me plenty of time to finish it. And finally, Last is going to be my YA Fantasy of the Month, and I am finally going back to the Throne of Glass series with Tower of Dawn. Again, I picked this one because it's chunky and it should take me from July through the end of August to read this one. You'll see I picked a lot of chunky books because I'm planning on pretty much taking 2 months to read all these. This is the 6th book in the Throne of Glass series, and again, it's been a while since I took a break from the series for a little bit. It's time to jump back in, so that is what I am doing. So that is everything for me today. My June wrap-up and my July TBR, July/August TBR. So now I want to know from you, what was your favorite book in June? What are you planning to read in July? And let me know if you're going on any fun trips. Thank you, Roscoe. All right, everyone, as always, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not already, please subscribe to my channel for more bookish stuff and more furry friends coming your way soon. All right, everyone, happy reading. Who's a good boy? Who's a good boy? Thank you, Roscoe.